Thank you, John. I appreciate it. I want to say that I really appreciate Carrie's presentation as well and the approach that the SAREC team has taken with that study. I really think that that kind of embodies what the experiment stations are here for, is to take a real resource question and try to wrap some data around that to try to provide good recommendations for people. And really that was partially the story behind this restoration challenge. I'll be very transparent in some of the ways that this thing came about. And John sort of introduced the overall plan for what we're doing, and we'll play a video here in just a second if it works. So the truth behind the restoration challenge is that we wanted to take a widespread, very important resource concern, which is the invasion of cheatgrass and its impacts across the western U.S., and open that up to see how other people would approach it. So instead of research team implementing treatments and following those and collecting data through time, we appreciate the fact that there's a lot of local expert knowledge around how to do these things, and so to invite other people, including producers and agency people who actively approach these concerns, to come here to the center and have a competition, really. And so that was one of the primary discussions that we had at the SAREC Advisory Board in fall of 2014, and how can we do something like this? The other little side story to that is I got tired of people asking me how to get rid of cheatgrass and me not knowing the best answer. And so I thought, well, let's see how other people would do it. And so fall of 14, we started the process of inviting people to come take part in this competition of restoring a cheatgrass, I would say definitely dominated pasture into a more productive, diverse pasture and rangeland type system. And so the groups all came together in April of 2015, the different teams, and we all agreed on a set of criteria by which we would judge each of the team's performance, and that ranged everything from how much cheatgrass did they get rid of, to how much did they improve forage productivity, to diversity of the desirable species on the site. John threw in the idea of scalability, so how scalable were the practices that they implemented across a larger area, economic benefits or costs of each of the different practices, and then an educational program. And so we did another thing that we're pretty good at the university. We take a relatively simple question, how do I restore a cheatgrass dominated rangeland, and we made it really complex as far as from an evaluation standpoint. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but basically we took each of those criteria, we had objective quantifiable data for each criteria, and then we weighted each of those criteria, and then we ranked each team, and then we took a sum of their points across there, and then we sent out information to outside advisors who also looked at the same data and gave us feedback that were not involved. And then we came up with final numbers. And what those final numbers will eventually give us is the champions that you will see after lunch or after dinner, at the beginning of dinner. And the trophy for the championship teams is a custom-made belt buckle that says Wyoming Restoration Challenge. And so they get a lifelong remembrance of their, what I would say maybe has been a stressful experience for this thing. And we're going to show a little video clip, and then I'll come back and talk a little bit more. When I was editing this down a little bit, is I wanted to just give a feel for some of the different feedback that we're getting. And for me, looking through the data and looking through the interviews that we have has been the most interesting thing. Is I feel like we had a few teams that kind of took for granted that they were going to just walk in and this was going to be an easy task, is to come in and do that. And so the perceptions of the teams, I think we're just beginning to develop the true educational material that will come out of this. How do we share the stories of what worked and what didn't work with the larger program? So if we can watch the video, then I'll come back and ramble on for just a minute.
So the challenge was to take a piece of ground that was almost entirely cheatgrass and re-veg it with perennial cover, looking for diversity, and doing it in a way that's economically sound and justified and appropriate for the situation.
To me, this was something that is of interest to every producer. Most government agencies, I think it's a big deal to them too, so it was just a perfect opportunity. And the things that we can learn from the different, I learned from how the other people did it. I think it's exciting. It's going to be more interesting as time goes on, how that worked out for them.
There are a lot of producers in Goshen County that have cheatgrass, and since this challenge takes place kind of in their backyard, some of the treatments that we're seeing in Goshen County could maybe be applicable to growers specifically around here.
And as you mentioned, a time to throw stones, we definitely saw that we are all living in a glass house, especially on these plots.
I'm pretty sure everybody who's participated so far is glad that they're doing it. And I just talked to the guy who lives over the hill right here, and he was telling me all the things he's doing, disking and spraying, and oh my gosh, and he's just standing back and watching this competition to see what happens. So it's cool. It's cool to know that people are watching what we're doing.
So I think as students, you talk a lot about theories and this could work or that could work, but you don't get a lot of opportunity for hands-on experience. So this was a pretty neat opportunity to get out in the field and try some of these things that we've been talking about and learning about in the classroom.
Some of the plots look really good. I'm not really sure exactly what they did. There's a few plots that are in some rough shape. There's one that looks like the moon.
Well, that plot over there looks kind of nice.
Yeah. They've been doing a lot of stuff. It seems like every time we're out here, they're out here too. And I'm sure they're out. Yeah, I'm sure they're out here more than we are.
And when we came to monitor in, I think it was mid-June, the spring wheat plot looked pretty nice. There wasn't a lot of other stuff growing in there. So it'll be interesting to see, because there isn't a lot of biodiversity, and that's part of the grading rules, but it'll be interesting to see what they do next.
Yeah.
So.
Well, look at this. It's obvious this is an ecological disaster area. I mean, everything here has been killed or burned or something. I mean, I don't know what they're trying to accomplish here, but it's obviously, if I was a judge, I would knock them down.
So really the only thing that matters here is results.
Really just sit back and think about what's going to come in after you do a treatment.
It helps if you can get the guy that makes it rain, do it in a timely manner. And we were pretty lucky at that. I mean, moisture was, I wouldn't say moisture was a big problem. If it had been 2012, I think everybody'd have a massive failure.
Cheatgrass is a bear to control. It's really hard to control and it can be very overwhelming.
So our biggest failures in this project were probably our first seeding.
As far as I know, the only thing that didn't do very well was the seeding. And again, that sounds like a very common problem.
Our seeding was definitely probably the biggest failure that we had.
Our seeding wasn't as successful as we would have liked.
Ours has definitely been a kind of a group effort, and a lot of different people coming in and out, and everybody's helped and had input. And I don't think we have a lead by any means on our deal, but it's been a good experience, and I think we've all definitely learned a little bit through the process. So.
I'm kind of interested to see the end results, so we could look at this more actually, because I'm not entirely sure what everybody else has done, but I'm really interested to see after the final assessment on the plots, going back and looking at, okay, this team did this and they had pretty good success, and this team did this and they didn't have good success, and so I think we can take a lot of all this and use it for either teaching people or talking to people about some of these things, and so that makes it kind of nice. And so many different options are out there that people are trying.
So that gives you a small taste of some of the diversity. And you see there's a little competitive nature that was kind of mixed in there with the teams too. So we had the teams ranged from current undergraduate students at the University of Wyoming, and that was a challenge for those guys in some ways because it was kind of a rotating team, and that they didn't end up with the same people that they started with, and some of the graduate students were the same way. It ranged all the way up to what I would say some more seasoned professionals that have been at this for a little bit longer time. And the practices, the management approaches showed that diversity as well, where we had some teams that took a very minimalist approach. They only did a few different practices that they thought would move the ball forward. And we had some teams that were very active in the number of practices that they did, and that maybe didn't really benefit them as much as we thought that it would in the first place. All of the data we're going to have condensed and summarized and available in a number of different areas, including some more videos and some publications and the website. We'll be sure that we link all of that to the SAREC website as well. I will say that you have an opportunity as participants today to directly participate in the evaluation for the second award that we give out, and that is it's going to be the People's Choice Award. And so that will go to the team that you guys that are here today actually vote the most for, and they will be able to take this award home and display it in their office or in their home. It started really simply, and it has actually ended up being probably one of the biggest learning experiences for me in my entire career, and it's been really fun. It's been really fun to see these people engage and learn from one another, and I've learned from them as well. Hopefully we'll continue to do that. So I would encourage you, if you're interested, to go out and look at those plots. I will say that we had one team who at the end this year, when we collected data, ended up with more cheatgrass than they started. We had one team that had tremendous production, but that only had one species, so their diversity score was low. We had one team, and I'll go ahead and ask Gary Stone with the University of Nebraska to stand up, that I would say honestly were far and away ahead of other teams from an educational standpoint. And so it has been all over the place as far as trying to figure out what's going on, but it's been a fantastic experience for me. And we'll find out the final results when we get back right before dinner. So.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Brian for coming up with this idea. It was really fun. And sitting in the NRCS, I think this shows that the way it's really supposed to be with ranchers working with NRCS. It's been fun. We bounced a lot of ideas back and forth. And it was educational to watch everybody else. And if everybody did the same thing next year that we did the last year, it'd probably be different.
I just want to thank Sydney and Larry both. They were the major part of the work that was involved with this.
So congratulations to you guys. I will say, if you're interested in seeing more of the details on what the teams did and how it worked, Wyoming Restoration Challenge has a Facebook page, and we're almost ready to populate a website called restoringrangelands.org, and that'll be a longer-term site that might have additional Restoration Challenge competitions on there. So those are two ways that you can continue to follow.